In today's video, I wanted to talk about the San Antonio Spurs. I think a lot of people around the NBA community have kind of written the Spurs off and considered that they're probably going to be bringing up their rear in the Western Conference for this upcoming 2021-22 season, but I disagree with this. I think the Spurs are going to be in the last play-in spot this year in the 10 seed, and in my Western Conference standings predictions video, I had them 10th, and I definitely got a lot of hate in the comments for this. A lot of people think the Spurs are definitely going to be last place this year, but I actually think they're putting together a really good young core that's good enough to make that play-in tournament again this season and has a really good future. Ever since the Spurs traded Kawhi Leonard, they really haven't been that same team that they're known for, but they still are coached by Greg Popovich, and I definitely think they're going in the right direction as a franchise. So that's going to be the topic of today's video. I'm going to talk about some individual players that I like on this team and I think have really bright futures, and also what they're looking like as a group and why I think they're going to make the play-in tournament this year and have a really bright future ahead of them as well. So let's get into the video. Let's start off by talking about DeJounte Murray. I think DeJounte is probably going to be the best player on this team for the next year. I mean, the Spurs haven't gotten a lot of hype because they did lose DeMar DeRozan, but I think offensively, DeJounte could take over the role of being that number one guy offensively. He's had a couple of full seasons under his belt now, running the offense of a team. He's definitely getting more used to it, and last year definitely had a career year. He's getting better at doing things like running the pick and roll, doing well in the mid-range area. Last year, shooting 44% from the mid-range area on about 9.5 attempts per game, according to backpicks.com, and is improving his shooting ability too, his overall scoring ability, his ability to get to the rim. His offensive IQ is getting a lot better, and he's a very good playmaker as well. Last year, DeJounte averaged about 15.5 points per game, 5.5 assists, which is definitely career best for him. Is also one of the best rebounding guards in the NBA, averaging 7 rebounds per game last season. He's not very efficient. Last year only had a 51% true shooting, which is well below average in the league right now, but I think now that he's got some more experience in the NBA, he has full seasons under his belt, he's going to be more experienced and know what are good shots to take, and overall he just has more experience now, and I expect him this season to probably get very much more efficient and also probably average about 20 points per game with 7 assists per game as well, and I think he's definitely going to be that main guy for them offensively this season, not only running the offense but probably taking the most shots on this team too. But DeJounte's main value is on defense. He's definitely a top 20 defender in the NBA right now, a clamp god out there on the perimeters, and is always going to guard the other team's best player night in and night out, especially if they're a guard. He can absolutely try to guard the other team's best player, be a pest, get up in them, and be one of the best perimeter defenders in the NBA. And I think having a perimeter defender like DeJounte who can guard the other team's best player every night is going to be really valuable for a young team just like this. Overall, he also has a really high defensive IQ. He's a good on-ball defender, like I said, but also a very good off-ball defender, knows when to help at the right time, can get a lot of steals and deflections, is overall a fantastic defender, and I absolutely expect DeJounte to kind of be the best player on the floor, pretty much on both ends of the floor for this team next season, and I think he's absolutely going to be able to do that. The next player I want to talk about here is Derrick White, who's definitely becoming one of the more underrated players in the NBA right now. I mean, offensively, he did a good job last year. He had the ball in his hands a lot more. He's very good at penetrating to the rim and creating space. He's an electric finisher around the rim. He can throw down a nasty dunk on you for sure, and overall does a great job finishing strong at the rim, and is a very good volume shooter as well, and can do well defensively. Last year, Derrick White averaged, just like DeJounte, 15.5 points per game for the Spurs team with 3 rebounds and 3.5 assists. A decent playmaker here as well. He can create some open shots for his teammates, and also, like I said, is a very good volume shooter. He shot 35% from 3 last year, but did this on 7 attempts per game, which is very impressive. A 55% true shooting here for Derrick White too, which is a little bit under average efficiency, but like I said, for DeJounte as well, Derrick White is getting more and more experience in the league right now, and I think he's going to take some better shots next year and become more efficient as well. And defensively, White is a very underrated defender. I mean, he can defend the perimeter a little bit, but he's also a very good off-ball defender and one of the best interior defenders in the league for his size. He holds opponents to shooting only 52% 52.7% when shooting from within 6 feet, which is extremely good for a guard, and also holds opponents to about 50.6% when they're shooting from within 10 feet. And this is way better than average for defensive guards. And Derrick White is, as you can see from just these stats and when you watch him play, is a very good interior and post defender for his size, and is a good off-ball defender as well. So he also has a very underrated overall game. Another good underrated young player on this team is Kelden Johnson, and I've been impressed with Kelden Johnson over the course of this season, really improving his scoring ability, being pretty efficient, knowing what his role is offensively, and knowing what his role is defensively as well, and overall providing a lot of good things for the Spurs team. Last year averaging about 13 points per game on about 48% from the field and 56% true shooting. Both of these are probably around average for efficiency in the NBA right now, and 13 points per game for Kelden Johnson, considering how young he is and how inexperienced he is in the NBA right now, is very impressive, and I also expect him to improve a lot offensively this season. He's very good in the post at times. He has a high offensive IQ and can cut to the basket and get easy baskets around the rim at times as well. And defensively, Kelden Johnson isn't great, but he is versatile and switchable and can guard effectively from the point guard position to the power forward position despite his 6'5" height. So it's pretty impressive what Kelden Johnson can do on both ends of the floor for being so inexperienced in the league right now. And really all three of the players that I've discussed so far, and I expect them to improve a lot this year as well. Let's talk about another young player like Lonnie Walker. I think he's a really good role player offensively too. He can finish around the rim very well. He's a very good shooter, and he's also pretty good defensively as well. He reminds me of a player like Kelden Johnson as well. Last year, he averaged 11.2 points per game and really showed that shooting ability, shooting about 36% from 3 on almost 5 attempts per game, which is very good for a young player. And you can see how he can, when you watch him play, he definitely plays his role offensively, and like I said, is a good role player. And defensively too, he can be a good perimeter defender at times, can pretty much guard 1 through 3, sometimes 1 through 4 on the floor, so is versatile as well, and is also contributing a lot of good things on both ends of the floor as a role player for the Spurs. And lastly, let's talk about Jakob Hertl, who I think again is one of the most underrated players in the league right now. He's a very good lob threat, one of the best in the league right now as a big man in the pick and roll, a very good screener, and defensively he's extremely underrated as well and has a case to be a top 25 defender in the NBA right now. We look at some stats. Hertl only averaged about 9 points per game last year for the Spurs, but he did it very efficiently. I know he is a big man, but he's a very good lob threat around the rim, can clean up the glass, also averaged about 8 rebounds per game last season and shot about 61.5% from the field. So you can see how he definitely gets a lot of easy baskets around the rim and plays his role offensively, and like I said, is a very good screener. Last year was 4th in the entire league in screen assists per game with 5.5, and 3rd in the league in screen assists points per game with around 12. So Hertl definitely plays his role extremely well offensively when it comes to screening, slipping towards the basket, cleaning up the glass and getting easy baskets around the rim, and at times playing in the post as well. And defensively, like I said, he's truly one of the best defensive big men in the league right now. A very, very good pick and roll defender when he's in drop coverage, does a very good job neutralizing the pick and roll of other teams, and is overall one of the best rim protectors in the NBA. And Hertl provides a ton of value for this team as a defensive anchor and a big man offensively. Not to mention too that the Spurs have pretty good depth off their bench, now adding Thaddeus Young, who can play in the post a lot, a sharpshooter like Doug McDermott, and also having young players, a guy like Devin Vassell, who can provide some value defensively and maybe be another sharpshooter for this team this season, a guy like Trey Jones, who could get more minutes and start to develop a little bit more in the NBA as a playmaker and perimeter defender, and they drafted Josh Primo, who could also maybe get some minutes for this team and start to develop. So already you can see the kind of the depth on this team and how they have a lot of good young players with some promise for sure, even off of their bench. So now let's talk about this Spurs team kind of as a group and what separates their young cores for some other young cores around the league. First of all, they're coached by Greg Popovich. I mean, this is just so obvious here what advantage this brings to their team. Pop's instincts as a coach and his IQ and just how he's one of the greatest coaches of all time is going to be so beneficial for all of these young players developing on both ends of the floor. And not to mention too that a big advantage for this team is how really their main young core has already been playing together for pretty much 2 to 3 years now, and they have experience and chemistry playing together, and especially this is going to play a big part for them defensively. I talked about how they have some really good defenders on this team, like one of the best perimeter defenders in DeJounte Murray, one of the best interior defenders in Jakob Hertl, and all of these other good switchable role players defensively surrounding them, and they have chemistry together, which is huge for a defensive team. And I honestly think that this group here could be a top 10 defensive team in the NBA this season, and that is why I really see them having a really good chance to make that play-in tournament this season. And all of this coached by Greg Popovich too, who's one of the best defensive coaches that we've ever seen. I mean, really, he's one of the best coaches on both ends of the floor, but he's a very good defensive coach. And offensively, both of these things are going to play in a lot too. Their chemistry and coaching is going to be very beneficial for this young team. So overall, to cap off today's video, the Spurs have a very underrated young core. They have a lot of young players who are good on both ends of the floor, can play their role on both ends of the floor. They have one of the best perimeter defenders in the league, one of the best interior defenders in the league, a guy who can lead their offense and maybe average 20 points per game this season in DeJounte Murray. And on both ends of the floor, they have pretty good chemistry as a young core together and are coached by Greg Popovich, which is going to play a huge role for them as well. So I think this Spurs team is not only has a bright future and can have a lot of improvement as a team, but I think they're good enough this season to get back in that play-in tournament despite not having DeMar DeRozan. And I think next season, after the 2022 season, I think this team could be even maybe back to contending for one of the top 5 seeds in the Western Conference. The rebuild that the Spurs are putting together here, surrounded by the coaching of Greg Popovich, is being very overlooked and underrated, and I think today's video will allow you guys to maybe see better just how good of a young core this team potentially might have a few years down the line, and how they might be good enough to make that play-in tournament again this season. So there you have it. That is the end of today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Make sure to comment down below your thoughts on today's video and your thoughts on the San Antonio Spurs going into this season and into their future. Thank you all for watching today's video. If you're new, be sure to subscribe as we're still on the road to 1,000 subscribers. So hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.